I've been crunching the numbers and analyzing the data for Season 1 of Marvel Rivals, and I found quite a few interesting things. And one of the most interesting aspects to Marvel Rivals is, without a shadow of a doubt, the hero bans, as they would indicate the more problematic heroes by either being the most overpowered characters that are in the game, or just outright being heroes that players don't like to play against. Though sometimes people will be voting for a ban specifically because they recognized a player on the enemy team and they want to shut down their main. Well, I've actually gone over 500 individual matches of ranked in Marvel Rivals, all of them from the top 500 players, and I have compiled all of the data about the hero bans in these games. And I'm telling you, some of these are going to be quite surprising. Now, it did take me a long time to compile all of this data for you, so if you enjoyed this type of video, let me know and maybe I can make some more data analysis video for you guys, and please subscribe for more Marvel Rivals content. Now, starting with the overwhelming number 1 ban that is actually surprising to me, that was banned 371 times out of 500 games, which equates to around a 74% ban ratio, and that is none other than Hela. That's right, in Season 1 people are still banning Hela above anything else. And this was actually surprising to me. Now, I still believe that Hela is one of the better characters in the entire game, as her hit scan damage is able to 2-tap heroes from a lot of distance, she's got a stun, an invulnerability dash, and an ultimate that gives her a 1000 HP shield, on top of giving crazy area denial, so she is a very powerful character without a shadow of a doubt. Now, she was nerfed in Season 1, they did reduce her HP from 275 to 250, and they also reduced the seasonal damage bonus from 20% to 15%, which actually does affect some of her breakpoints in dealing damage. I believe she no longer is able to one-shot and body-shot a lot of heroes now, as in Season 0 that would actually transfer into an elimination. Now, I do want to say that a lot of these bans come from people being frustrated at Hela. She's just not a very fun hero to play against, and that is also why Hawkeye was such a banned hero in the previous season. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but heroes that tend to one-shot or two-shot you are just always annoying to play against because it adds an element of randomness to the game, where if there is a player that just has insane aim and they have the ping on their side, they can just take the entire game hostage and win the match very easily. And again, with Hela being able to easily escape and having the ultimate that is often used as an escape as well, she's a very dominating presence, and even in the current meta that is predominantly made up of 3 support heroes on each team, a hero that can 2-tap them like Hela is incredibly powerful. So it ultimately does make sense as to why she is so often banned. I just didn't expect her to be number 1. Now, that being said, the second most banned hero is Hulk, with 348 bans or a 69.6% ban ratio. Now, there's a lot of reasons as to why Hulk is being banned so often in Season 1. He was also quite often banned in Season 0, as on top of being a very powerful Vanguard, being able to dive the enemy team, provide shields to the team, having some crazy effective health with his ultimate and also his passive that makes him go into Mini Hulk or Bruce Banner when he is killed, he is honestly a menace by himself. But on top of that, we gotta take into consideration the really good team up that he has with Iron Man. That of course allows Iron Man to deal a lot more damage, being able to deal about 250 damage per second, which is absolutely absurd. And of course, Iron Man also having one of the best ultimates in the game, being able to one-shot enemies even through the defensive ultimates, which tend to dictate the games. Having a Hulk on the team is just going to provide a crazy amount of impact and value, and so players just don't want to deal with all of that, and so they would rather ban Hulk. That is going to shut down Hulk by himself, but is also going to make the Iron pick less powerful. And obviously Hulk also has a team-up ability with Doctor Strange, though that one is not as impactful, so this one is definitely not surprising. Now, the third most banned hero, which I thought was going to be the number 1, is none other than Luna Snow. Luna Snow was banned 311 times out of 500 games, which equates to around a 62% ban ratio. Now, I should have mentioned this, but more than one team can actually ban the same hero, which actually happened quite often to all 3 of these heroes, which is why their ban ratio is so high. Now, Luna Snow is evidently one of the very best characters, if not the very best hero in the entire game outright, being able to provide some crazy heals, having the snowflake that she can provide to someone that allows her to heal someone that they don't even see, having a stun, and of course, best of all, her ultimate that is a 12-second healing overtime ability that is absolutely insane. And honestly, I just think that people don't like playing into Luna Snow's ultimate. The game basically turns into a slapfest, and because she's able to generate the ultimate so quickly, it all comes down to support ultimate's economy, which which players are using their ultimates at the wrong time, and which players are forcing the enemy supports to use their ultimates so that they can then wait for that ultimate to run out and then engage and win the team fight. As a result, the metagame of Marvel Rivals is a little bit stale at the moment, as again, the triple support meta has come to stay. So yeah, I'm sure that Overwatch players are getting war flashbacks right now from the GOATs, and the slapfests that ensue from all of these supports and defensive ultimates turns the game a lot slower and not as enjoyable. And with Luna Snow being the one with the most impactful ultimate, I think it's natural that players, at least out of spite, would go ahead and ban this hero because it just makes the game a lot less fun for most players. And again, it's a crazy powerful hero that you are able to ban, because if Luna Snow is available to be picked and no one on your team is picking it, but the enemy team has a Luna Snow, your odds of winning are going to be much lower. Now, the fourth most banned hero is actually none other than Wolverine, coming in at 219 bans with a 43.8% ban ratio. And me and many other players actually predicted this, that Wolverine would be one of the most banned heroes in Season 1, as he was a hero that got a lot of power towards the end of Season 0, as players finally learned how to properly play him, how to utilize him against tanks, to take them out of the fight and turn the game into a 6v5. And because the devs likely listened to what people were saying about the game 1 or 2 weeks into release, and didn't really take into account the feedback towards the end of the season, they ended up buffing Wolverine by increasing his HP from 300 to 350, making one of the most oppressive heroes in the game even more powerful. So naturally, as a result, he ends up being one of the most banned heroes in the game. Now, I expect that most of these bans would be coming from tank players that simply do not want to deal with Wolverine, because if you're playing a Strange, for example, and you are against a good Wolverine, there's just nothing you can do. He's going to kidnap you and one-shot you, and then your team is going to be without a tank, and it just doesn't feel good. Now, truth be told, Wolverine isn't quite at the very top of the meta in my opinion. This is something that I have talked about in my tier list, but Wolverine has a new counter in the form of Invisible Woman that completely shuts him down, and she by herself is a very powerful hero with a great ultimate, but her shift just makes Wolverine unable to grab anyone as it cancels the animation, and that is going to leave Wolverine vulnerable, and he's simply not going to be able to play. Additionally, given that people are often playing in the 3 support meta teams, chances are that there's only going to be a single tank on a team, so Wolverine is going to get less value out of the additional damage that he deals to people with more health. So yeah, while I do believe that a lot of this ban ratio is out of frustration and perhaps even trauma, understandably, from the tank players, I actually expected him to be a little bit lower. Now, the next hero I'm sure a lot of people saw coming a mile away, and that is going to be none other than Storm, the most buffed hero in Season 1 that went from the very bottom of the tier list to the very top with 202 bans with a 40% ban ratio. And man, oh man, what a journey Storm has gone over. This hero is absolutely insane, just deals a lot of damage, provides movement speed and damage boost to the entire team, is able to cleave through enemies, and that is especially useful in the big team fights with the big defensive ultimates because people will be grouped up, and Storm will be able to just deal a lot of damage and generate her ultimate incredibly quickly. I think the only DPS that you could compare in terms of ultimate generation would be Moon Knight, but I don't think Moon Knight is anywhere near as good as Storm is. She just has a lot going on for her, and because people are grouped up, her ultimate is going to be easier to land. She's just in the perfect spot in the meta right now, and there's still a lot of people using her wrong, a lot of people playing Storm like she's Iron Man when they should instead just honestly stay back behind the Doctor Strange shield, close to cover and her teammates, and provide a damage amp for everyone, and use the movement speed to catch up to someone that is off guard. And with her insane damage, with all of the new range that she now has, and with her taking over games very easily, it's totally understandable that she has this high ban ratio. Now, after that, we have Hawkeye at a much lower number of bans at 123, which equates to almost a 25% ban ratio. Again, Hawkeye, I think it's kind of like Hela, where a lot of the bans come from people being frustrated when playing against Hawkeye, because even after the nerfs that he got in Season 1, he's still able to one-shot you from 40 meters. He just basically does less damage to tanks or people with additional bonus health. Now, I think that Hawkeye is in a good position. He isn't just as powerful as all of the other heroes that I've shown here on the list, and given that he is easily diveable as well, there's a lot of counterplay against him. But because again, you can get a crazy good Hawkeye with a crazy good ping that is able to one-shot everyone and win the match by himself, people just don't want to deal with that, and so they would much rather end up banning him, which is totally understandable. Now, at this point in the video, I'm not going to be going over heroes individually. I'm going to start grouping some of them with closer ban ratios, as from here downwards they are around the 10% or lower, so I will be grouping them in terms of percentages. So the next two heroes are Invisible Woman with an 11% ban ratio and Psylocke with a 10% ban ratio. Invisible Woman, as I said before, is a very powerful strategist, being able to shut down a lot of divers with her shift ability while also being able to pull in enemies or push them away. There's a lot of plays that you can make on her, and her ultimate is also a very powerful defensive ultimate, so when Luna Snow is banned, she's the one that ends up being banned the most out of the support role, but there might be some recency bias included into these numbers, as she's one of the two new characters added to the game, and there's a chance that some players are banning Invisible Woman simply because they don't want to have an Invisible Woman player on their team that doesn't have as much experience with the hero compared to, let's say, a Mantis or a Loki. Now Psylocke, she did end up getting nerfed, and as a result I feel like she's banned a lot less in these games. Now the nerf was only to her ultimate, but I don't think it quite affects her as much. I think that people nowadays are just using the ultimate to get 1 or 2 kills on isolated enemies, and her ultimate is still pretty crazy, as it's very hard to CC a Psylocke when she's ulting. You need to do it pretty much frame perfect when she's about to get close, and she's the only assassin that can deal damage from a distance with some easy one-shot combos. So again, I feel like she's not as powerful as she was, especially as people learned how to play against her, but she still gets a ton of value, and in a meta where most players are going to be running around with squishy heroes, an assassin like her is going to thrive. Now the next 4 heroes are between the 10% and 5% ban ratios, and they are Namor, Black Panther, Venom, and Groot. Now Namor is an absolute beast of a hero. He completely shuts down dive by himself with his turrets, dealing a ton of damage to people, and with the buff that he received, making it so that the frozen turrets that he gets from the Luna Snow team up being buffed to deal more damage in Season 1, he is a very powerful character that can be oppressive, especially on defense, and I think the reasons why his ban ratio is so low is, for one, people are already banning Luna Snow, which removes the team up for Namor, and thus he's going to be less effective, though I would argue that he is still quite powerful. But on the other hand, I also feel like Namor is one of the least played heroes because he's not as fun as some of the other ones, so you are less likely to see him, and because he doesn't have this big one-shot ability like a lot of other heroes have, he doesn't quite jump up in the number of bans. Black Panther, I'm actually a little bit surprised to see him this high on the list because he was nerfed, and quite significantly, as they have reduced the health that he gains from his shift ability in a couple of ways. Still, I think Black Panther is a very powerful assassin, and in the meta where squishy heroes are often being grouped up, a hero like Black Panther can actually thrive by diving the backline, hitting multiple people with the spears and the ultimate to get the resets on the dash, and deal a lot of damage that way, or just build up the ultimate very quickly. Now Venom being this high is pretty cool because he was a pretty weak hero in Season 0, but his buffs in Season 1 have made him much more viable. He still gets easily stunned whenever he dives the enemy backline, but because he gains much more HP from his E ability, and they've also increased the damage of his ultimate, he's able to stay much longer in the fights. And with Hulk being often banned, and in case you want a dive tank on your team, then Venom is definitely going to be the number 2 pick for you. And also him enabling the team up with Spider-Man, that can make Spider-Man combos be a lot more consistent. There's also additional reason as to why people would ban him. Now Groot being this high is very surprising to me. I didn't imagine people dislike playing against Groot this much. Now I do want to say I respect Groot players very much. I feel like the hero is very powerful, and I've seen many Groots carry the game by themselves because on top of having a crazy amount of HP and being able to generate even more HP with his walls, he can also do a very good amount of damage, isolate the enemy front lines from the supports, making it so that they either have to push up to heal or that the tank is no longer able to be healed and likely they might die as a result. Not to mention Groot's ultimate being incredibly powerful, as it is able to group everyone together kind of like a Zarya Grav, which of course allows you to combine that with powerful ultimates like Iron Man, Storm, Moon Knight, and many others, and easily wipe the entire enemy team. But I just don't see Groot being played as often, which is why it surprises me this much that he is banned this often. Like, I would expect Magneto to be on here because I feel like he's more powerful and played more often, but these are the numbers and you can't argue with math. Now the following heroes are all below 5% going down to 2%, so let's quickly run through them. Magic, I feel, is one of those cases where I feel like you often get these Magic one-trick players that are just insanely good at generating value, because Magic is one of those heroes that despite having a simple kit, it's very hard to have a big impact on a game with Magic unless you are very good, because there's a lot of different things that you could be doing. You could be diving the enemy backline, you could be playing as an off-tank, using your minion spawn in your portals as a way to avoid taking damage. Magic's ultimate is also quite awful in my opinion, having a long activation time and deactivation time, so there's a lot of things going against Magic, but I feel like in a meta where people are often in these big slap fights with triple supports, Magic is actually capable capable of thriving in that meta because she generates additional health by just left-clicking enemies, and because people will be grouped up more often in this meta, she will have more health and then be more effective. Mantis being here is totally expectable. She's a very powerful strategist, being able to deal a ton of damage. Her heals are pretty weak compared to some of the other strategists, and her ultimate has to be the weakest defensive ultimate, but again, you likely have two other strategists on the team that can offer healing for the rest of your team. You can instead focus on damage boosting yourself and the DPS hero, going for an off angle, trying to put someone to sleep and one-shot them, and focus on just healing your supports, and you're going to generate a ton of value this way. Star-Lord is very expectable to be on here. I think he's a very powerful hero, often wipes out the enemy team with the ultimate or just doesn't get a single kill. Very rarely it's anything in between. He's a crazy good hero with a lot of mobility that I think is a little bit worse in this meta, as he can be shut down by a lot of defensive ultimates, but again, he is still a threat and can still carry a lot of games. Doctor Strange being the quintessential tank of the game that is picked pretty much every single game would actually make sense to be banned more often than he is, but I guess people like him but they don't find him to be too oppressive, and I'm guessing that a lot of these bans are coming from Brute or Venom players that actually don't play Strange, and so they don't see the reason as to why they would allow the enemy team to be playing him. Now Rocket and Adam Warlock being on here above Cloak and Dagger and Loki is a little bit surprising, though the difference between these two and Loki isn't all that big. And with Rocket not having a defensive ultimate and Adam Warlock only being a revive, which I think is a lot less impactful than the other defensive ultimates, I don't know, I just don't see these heroes being as valuable as the other supports. Though again, it could just be people recognizing the enemy player and banning their main, which can totally happen. Now Loki, I gotta give respect to Loki. I actually expected him to be banned a little bit more, because in the games that you have a Luna Snow available, you can actually just have two Luna Snows with Loki, or if she's banned, you can have a Cloak and Dagger in the Loki to get the incredibly powerful defensive ultimates with both characters. But I guess people would rather ban those heroes than Loki. But again, it leads me to the question as to why people aren't banning Cloak and Dagger. That's quite surprising. And from now, you're going to be able to see the list of all of the heroes that have been banned in these top 500 games, below 2% all the way down to 0% of games, with a couple notable picks being, again, as I said, Magneto, Cloak and Dagger, and Iron Man. Now, Iron Man, I do get it, because if you ban Hulk, you kind of don't have to deal with Iron Man with the empowered beam, so it's totally fine. He isn't all that amazing without it, but Magneto is incredibly powerful, and he's able to one-shot the support heroes through defensive ultimates, and Cloak and Dagger has the second best defensive ultimate in the game, on top of a ton of healing and a crazy debuff on the enemy that makes them take 30% more damage. I really don't get why people aren't banning Cloak and Dagger more often. And I guess I should also mention that Mr. Fantastic was actually banned once out of all of these 500 games. Now I'm gonna go ahead that it was the case that someone wanted to play Mr. Fantastic, or people recognized that he played Mr. Fantastic on their team and didn't perform very well, and so they banned their own teammates from being able to play this hero because honestly he's not very good. And the final four heroes that I didn't see being banned a single time across these 500 games were Black Widow, Penny Parker, Scarlet Witch, and Thor. Now Scarlet Witch I didn't even see being played in a single game. Thor I actually did see get some usage, and surprisingly Black Widow as well, though they did seem to be Black Widow 1 tricks that were actually able to carry games with this hero. I don't think her buffs were enough to make her viable. I just think that there's some really cracked players with insane aim that are able to make this hero work, and more likely than not they would be at a higher elo if they were just playing someone better like Hela. And this has been a very thorough analysis of the most banned heroes in Marvel Rivals. Now of course we don't have access to the actual data for the number of bans in this game, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that led to the questionable decision of me analyzing these 500 games and getting this data for you guys. Let me know if you want to see another video like this, and as always, my name is Dark Hero. Thank you all so much for watching.